For the past several weeks, Northwest Indiana has been experiencing a disturbing outbreak of violent crime. In this special edition of Lakeshore Report, we'll cover the region's response to crime, from honoring victims and tracking down offenders to prevention efforts and rehabilitation for those in the criminal justice system. First, our top stories. In Crown Point, an 18-year-old man is charged with murder for allegedly stabbing his girlfriend's mother. According to a probable cause affidavit filed July 11th, Demarius Wren attacked 54-year-old DeCarol Deloney Kane in the basement of her home on July 3rd. The woman's body was discovered July 7th in Gary in the trunk of her abandoned car. The victim's daughter, Alyssa Barrett, told police Wren attacked her mother on the morning of the 3rd and recruited friends to help him remove the body from the house. Deloney Kane worked as a flight attendant for United Airlines. On the same day charges were filed in the Crown Point murder, an elderly woman was fatally stabbed in her room at Broadway Methodist Hospital in Merrillville. Before losing consciousness, the victim, 80-year-old Gary resident Margreen Haywood, was able to identify the assailant as her son, Rodney Lewis Dickinson. When police were dispatched to do a wellness check on Haywood's husband, they found 88-year-old James Haywood dead from multiple stab wounds in his Gary home. Police apprehended the son, Rodney Lewis Dickinson, near the 3800 block of Maryland in Gary. He's been charged with murder and is being held in the Lake County Jail. This week, the city of Gary was filled with mourners as police laid to rest a fellow officer. Sarah Holst has more on the services for Jeffrey Westerfield.
Kristen, the shooting death of Gary police officer Jeffrey Westerfield was shocking to many, even in a city plagued by violence. This week, law enforcement officers from across the Midwest joined together to honor one of their own.
A thin blue line on a black background is a symbol for brotherhood and unity among law enforcement. It's also used as a symbol of mourning when an officer is killed. On July 14th, hundreds of police officers, each with a black and blue band covering their badges, gathered in Northwest Indiana to pay their final respects to a fallen comrade. Gary police officer Jeffrey Westerfield was shot and killed while on duty July 6th. The day was also Westerfield's 47th birthday. The officers came from Illinois, Michigan, and southern Indiana to escort Westerfield to his final resting place at Chapel Hill Cemetery in Cherryville. During a service at the Genesis Convention Center in Gary earlier in the day, Indiana Senator Joe Donnelly praised Westerfield as a true son of the region. Lieutenant Governor Sue Ellspermann told the crowd that Westerfield did not seek glory or fame, but simply wanted to serve his community. Police bagpipes and a single riderless horse preceded the officer's hearse. Westerfield's service in the United States Army was also recognized with military honors.
Present! Home!
The flag over his casket was meticulously folded before being presented to his children by Gary Police Chief Wade Ingram. A white carnation representing a good life, with a single red dot in the center to symbolize bloodshed, was pinned to each officer's chest. As the ceremony concluded, the flowers were placed on top of Westerfield's casket, each small bloom resting with hundreds of others to represent the swell of grief and loss felt by fellow officers and the community. 2 days later, a small contingent of local officers and members of the Fraternal Order of Police joined friends and family at the site in Gary where Westerfield died. Gary Police Commander Michael J. Jackson spoke of the easygoing man he worked with for over 20 years.
He served under me in the patrol division, since I've been commander, and he's a good guy, come to work, does his job, it's sad if something like that happens to anyone, but especially a guy like him. He never hurt anybody, he was just too laid back, to be honest with you. That's the kind of guy he was.
Lake County Sheriff John Bunsich told the group that a white cross at the intersection would serve as a reminder to officers who patrol the area.
The officers that especially were here on the scene that day, the tragic scene, that remember exactly what happened, and remembrance in Officer Westerfield's the ultimate sacrifice that he made. So when you're patrolling this area, they'll realize, hey, how serious a profession, how dangerous a profession we have in law enforcement.
Lake County Sheriff's Police continue to investigate Westerfield's death, and a $10,000 reward has been offered for information leading to a conviction. Officer Westerfield's death is one of a number of cases that involve cooperation from multiple police agencies. Back in March of this year, another shooting required immediate response from both the Griffith and Gary police departments when 42-year-old Nina Castro was killed by her estranged husband in the parking lot of St. Mary's School in Griffith. The man then fled to Gary, where he was confronted by officers there. Shortly after the incident, the Lakeshore's Steve Walsh spoke with local law enforcement about what it takes to coordinate response efforts in a situation where every minute counts.
Welcome. So there are several efforts underway by various police departments around the county to try to work together in Northwest Indiana, anything from consolidating 911 to banding together for special teams. To talk about it, about how these departments work together, we have Robert Bird, who is chief of the NICDEED Police Department and also spokesman for the Major Crimes Unit in Northwest Indiana. And also we have Chief Wade Ingram with the Gary Police Department. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Steve.
So there are several different task forces out there that have banded together over the last couple of years to try to better use the resources that we have here in Northwest Indiana. And I kind of want to start with something that had been happening this week with the St. Mary's in Griffith, where we had that murder-suicide there. Now, I know this wasn't considered a major crime because it was solved pretty much right away. But when you have a situation like that, where you have somebody that starts off at a school in Griffith, where someone is shot, and then they ultimately find that person in Gary, I mean, how do these different departments work together to actually, track down the person involved? Chief?
Well, the Griffith Police Department, when they determined that this individual, when they ran his license plate and they came up with an address, they sent a teletype message to the Gary Police Department, who then dispatched that call. About 10 or 15 minutes later, because of my cooperation with Chief Greg Mance, he called me on my telephone to let me know what had happened. By the time I got to the scene, the offender had already turned the gun on himself. But they had sent a teletype message to the Gary Police Department to be on the lookout for this individual on a motorcycle. And my officers went to that location, and they actually confronted him there.
So this is almost instantaneous, the kind of cooperation. And that's
Yes.
just sort of almost the routine kind of cooperation that we see between these different departments.
And it was personal because Chief Mance gave me a call, gave me a heads up as to what was going on in Griffith. So I was armed with some information that my officers didn't necessarily have from Griffith, and his guys didn't have the information that we had in Gary. So we shared that information.
So that's kind of on the basic level. But when we get more sophisticated, we're talking about a homicide, something that's happened where you may not know who did this immediately. You're often handling these. Gary has, some of the murders in this community. How often do you end up working with other departments?
Well, we know that crime is regional. We know that these criminals don't know borders. And so we often work on a regular basis. We have our monthly meeting with the Major Crime Task Force. We have a monthly meeting with HIDA. So the chiefs around here, we pretty much work together. We have a stop team, so we constantly sharing intelligence as to what's going on in this Northwest Indiana.
But it wasn't always this way, though. Major Crimes started back in 2006, right?
Correct, yeah. In 2006 we started. It was part of Calumet College of St. Joseph. They had the Public Safety Institute and got everybody together and say, how can we do a better job working murders? How can we put more police officers, more investigators on some of the major cases that require a lot of manpower? And that's what happened. Now we've got 23 local police departments in Lake and Porter County, plus we have 3 federal agencies, the FBI, ATF, and the high intensity drug trafficking area, and about 60 investigators. So Should Wade have a homicide in his city that requires a lot of detectives on the case, he'll make the call, and we respond a number of officers, and it provides a rapid start to that investigation.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that is where we're going to have to leave it for right now. This has been Gary Police Chief Wade Ingram and Nick Teat Police Chief, spokesman for Major Crime, Robert Byrd. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
While no one person can solve the problem of violence in our communities, many organizations are pitching in to attack it from a variety of angles. Recently, Lakeshore-focused Keith Kirkpatrick sat down with Tom Branson, project director for the Lake County Sheriff's Office Violence Intervention Program, and Patrick Sabatis, former gang member and founder of the Sabatis Educational Institution, to talk about their efforts to stop the crime that starts with gangs.
My primary focus now is gang awareness and consequence education in the schools, churches, and community groups, much like what Patrick's doing. I give my perspective from law enforcement, and obviously being a senior member of society, I've seen a few things over the years. And I think this is a good balance and complements each other. I can relate to certain portions of the audience based on the fact I'm grandfatherly and I'm a law enforcement officer. Now that'll turn some people off, where his approach with the younger gang members, former gang members, he can relate to them on a different level. So we reach a happy balance there.
So how long were you involved in gangs?
I was involved in gangs for about 7 years.
Okay, starting at what age?
10 years old.
So 10 through 17.
Yeah.
My math's pretty decent, right?
That's good. That's really good.
So, but you've been out of it now for, you're 30-something?
32.
Okay, so you've been out of it for 15 years or so.
Yeah.
So what got you out?
I started going, actually a former gang member came and began to share and say, you know, you don't need to be in this environment. And I actually listened to him, but prior to that, people always, law enforcement, oh, you don't need to be out here, this isn't healthy for you, and et cetera, and church groups. But when it was somebody that came from, you know what I mean, where I was involved in, I actually started listening to him.
So when you were 16, let's go back to 15, can you think back to 15 or 16, all right? And a guy like this came into your school or wherever you were and started talking about you need to not be in gangs. What did you think of somebody like that?
I didn't respect law enforcement because of bad experience with officers slamming you on the cars and really acting really ignorant. You know what I mean? Why do I want to listen to somebody that, yeah, at the end of the day they're doing their job, but there's probably a better, more polite way or more somewhat to do it. Maybe they're concerned about their life, but it's that real, you know, hatred towards them.
So when you hear that, Tom, and you probably never slammed anybody against a car, right? So when you think back about how you've dealt with gang members in the past when you were doing this, or what do you say to some of the other officers about that kind of reaction?
If it's excessive, like Patrick just said, it's not very tasteful. There's a lot of adrenaline pumping when you go up against a gang member. You don't know what they're carrying. You don't know if they're doing counter surveillance and somebody's watching you and you're caught between him and your counter surveiller. So there's a quick heartbeat and you want to get in there fast and furious and take control. Excessive stuff doesn't work. It doesn't leave a very good impression, as he just told you.
Mm-hmm. But you still have to be tough because there's concern here, but on the other hand, some of that toughness is he's reacting and going, I don't like this.
Well, you have to take control because in the gang members' world, they're in control. And law enforcement has to show that they're in control. And so you've got these two thunderheads clashing, but it's a very dangerous situation in a lot of cases.
Is that a pretty good description of it?
Correct, because they're coming into that particular neighborhood, whether it's a few blocks, 1 block, or whatever. So the gangs have taken ownership. That's their hood. You know what I mean? The stuff that peddles on in there, the various things that go on, that's their neighborhood. So anything outside of that, former gang members, law enforcement, anybody that's contrary to their belief system, you're in opposition. So you're going to have to leave or convert over.
How big is this problem for our region or for the Chicagoland area or whatever?
Right now, we've joined forces with the Cook County Gang Task Forces, and we're trying to compile database. Right now in Lake County, we've got about 12,000 identified gang members in our database. Now with the trans-border crossings of the gangs, it's going to be really tough to increase that.
That's like a huge army.
Well, to be honest with you, there's over 33,000 gangs in the United States, growing at about 40% a year, and that was a 2012 statistic.
Wow, but 12,000 kind of in the Chicagoland.
That's just
area.
In the Tri-County area,
Okay.
Lake Porter and LaPorte County. Those are just the identified ones. These aren't the ones that are
That's
cropping up.
Lake Porter and LaPorte. That's
Right.
not Chicago.
No.
12,000 in here in Northwest Indiana.
And it's growing, yeah.
Wow. So can you talk about what gang you were in?
I was in the Latin Kings.
Okay. Isn't that like one of the biggest?
It's one of the larger ones, yes.
Okay. I mean, do they internally talk about how many members they have? Or, I mean, is that kind of talked internally when you were involved in it, or do you even hear that today?
You do, because they tell you what chapters or what sections or different states that, you know, things are going on. And at times there's meetings that you have that, you know, gangs are coming from different states, just, you know, you mean talking about business or what's going on in them areas.
So what's your view of when Tom says there's 12,000? I mean, does that sound like that number's high, low?
He says 12,000. That's 12,000 that's on file that's got arrested. Now, there's others out there, like he says, that, you know what I mean, that haven't got caught up or kind of under the radar.
Gang activity in prison sentencing can often be cyclical in a criminal lifestyle. One law enforcement group in the region is trying to curb recidivism through education. This year, Lake County became home to a new education course founded on the basis of exploring social issues through the prism of prison. In May, I sat in on the course that encourages learning in a place where some of the students in the class are locked up.
That's your concern, Monica, no worries. Well, without this class, true.
A chair, a pen,
The average criminal look like.
and a piece of paper. All familiar tools of a classroom, but this education is happening behind barred doors.
There are people who have too much and people who really have nothing.
On this day, 15 students form a circle to chat, but only 2 of them, including Tammy Moore, have a dress code, an inmate jumpsuit.
I got up and moved my seat next to one of them to let them know, you know, we're the same, we're all people, you know, just because you're inside and we're outside, you know, and they felt that way because they have these jumpsuits on and then we come in regular clothes.
What is after the probation period?
Assistant Professor Monica Solinas Saunders says her unique class, held at Lake County Community Correction Center in Crown Point, is not activism or advocacy, it is simply a mutual exchange.
All students, all people in society need to learn from groups that are different from their own.
In the Inside Out Prison Exchange Program, students from Indiana University Northwest and students from the correctional facility meet twice a week to study together.
And the students were very comfortable with one another and they seem to need the interactions.
If they had more programs and places that did the things that this place does.
IUN senior Ebony Hicks says the class shatters stereotypes about the Inside students who are either on work release or house arrest for felony crimes.
There's a big stereotype out there that if you are locked up, no matter what you did, you are automatically guilty and you're a bad person. So I wanted to kind of try to break this stereotype because I used to feel that same way.
The barriers between community agencies like institutions like prisons and the university fall apart. They fall down and it will really become one community.
Solinas Saunders is one of only about 300 instructors nationwide certified to teach the Inside Out curriculum.
It takes away everything from you, you know. I feel like it takes away the self-esteem.
Inside student Tammy Moore, set to be released in October, says the voluntary class should be mandatory.
I love this class. It helped me a lot, and it helped me to calm down because I was so defensive at first and angry, you know, and it helped me think a different way. Well, just think about it, what if they didn't have these classes? I'd just be sitting upstairs, still having that same mentality that I have, and still angry.
I was afraid of her. She came off aggressive, and now it's like she brings me lollipops, you know, we're hugging, we're talking, and, you know, she got a job.
Class discussions often focus on issues of offender reentry.
Ex-offenders lacking the ability to find jobs, to find especially meaningful employment, that gives them back the dignity.
After a semester-long course, Senior Elliot Gable has a new title for the incarcerated women.
Tammy's my friend. Some of the women know more stuff about me than some of my friends. It's almost like an honor when somebody you don't know talks about their personal life. So I try to do the same. I changed, not so much change my major, but I just changed my thought. One day I hope to have the means to help out ex-offenders.
Salinas Saunders says inside students can qualify for course credit at IUN if they enroll within 5 years of completing the Inside Out course.
Thanks, Hillary. This past week, Lakeshore Report reached out on social media to ask viewers the following question. Given the recent violence in the region, including the death of Gary police officer Jeffrey Westerfield, what are your thoughts about public safety? Sue A. writes, I think it's important to educate the public on when and how to report suspicious activity in their buildings or neighborhood. Eyes and ears of a trained public is the best way to stop crime. Community awards for their bravery and action is a great way to encourage good behavior. Tina H. says, we need more police on the streets, plain and simple. Tell these politicians to stop spending money on beautifying and entertainment and start hiring more cops now. We appreciate all of our viewer comments and suggestions. You can reach us on TV feedback at lakeshorepublicmedia.org. You can also reach out to us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll tune in next week for Lakeshore Report.
Hi, joining me for this edition of Eye on the Arts is Kirk Muspratt, Music Director of the Northwest Indiana Symphony Orchestra. Kirk, nice to have you back.
Thank you, John.
It's summertime, so that's
Fantastic.
what you're here to talk about, right?
I am. Summer concerts. Free summer concerts.
Free. Yeah.
So we're going to play over 4 weekends. We're going to start on the 19th in Cedar Lake.
Mhm.
The next weekend, we're in Griffith on the 25th, Crown Point on the 26th.
Mhm.
When we get into August 1, we're at Wolf Lake in Hammond. And on the 9th, we close the series in Cherville at Reeder Park.
Yeah, and they had a rain location last year.
Oh,
That was too bad.
we always have rain locations.
Well, no, I know we have them, but we
I
had
know.
to use it last year.
Yeah, we were
I
pretty
remember.
lucky, though,
Yeah,
last year.
but so these are all outdoor concerts, obviously. Cedar
Oh,
Lake
yeah.
is on the lake.
Oh, beautiful.
By the lighthouse.
Gorgeous.
Yes. And
Gorgeous.
Griffith, is that called Central Park?
Central
in
Park,
Griffith?
yep.
And Crown Point by the hospital.
Yeah, Franciscans, yeah.
And Hammond at that really nice new pavilion.
Amazing Wolf Lake Pavilion, yeah.
Mhm. Is that a good place to play?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Is it?
We should have one in every town.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And it's just out there.
I know.
Yeah.
It's
And
really
and Reeder Park is, you've played
Yeah,
in
we
Cherville
played there
before.
several times, yeah.
I have not been there because that was before my time.
Oh, okay. No, it's very nice, and we're happy to be back there.
So what kinds of music are you programming this
Oh,
year?
a whole potpourri for everybody, I hope. We're going to start with light classical music, von Suppé and Rossini. Then we're going to do some Embraceable You type Gershwin.
Uh-huh.
Then we're going to do some polkas, clarinet polka, and then the audience must sing Beer Barrel Polka with us.
They should know that.
They should know that. And then we're going to close the first half actually with 2 cowboy pieces, Gunsmoke and Magnificent Seven.
Oh, how fun.
That's the first half.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second half is Horner, Cocoon music, Forrest Gump, and then some music of John Williams, JFK, Raiders March, a mission theme. And we're also going to have some patriotic music on the second half.
You always do such a good job of picking out all of that.
Thank you. It's a nightmare
Yeah.
doing it, but I think it's a big responsibility.
And our sponsors, quickly.
Oh, our sponsors are
Yes.
fantastic. Strachan Van Til and Chase. And
Yes.
they're our angels, and we thank them so much.
We're very grateful to them. Well, thank you for being here to tell us about it.
Thanks,
and
John.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Eye on the Arts.
Eye on the Arts is made possible in part by South Shore Arts, the Indiana Arts Commission, and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency.